Justice, true justice, will not come until we finally banish the ancient poison of racism from the American soul. The Senate will continue to work as we strive to ensure that George Floyd's tragic death will not be in vain. We will not rest until the Senate passes strong legislation to end the systemic bias in law enforcement. Now, on a related subject, part of that effort, though modest, is installing committed, experienced, compassionate civil rights leaders in positions of power in the Justice Department, our nation's top law enforcement agency. It just so happens that today, the Senate will vote on the confirmation of Ms. Vanita Gupta to be the next Associate Attorney General. Not only is Ms. Gupta the first woman of color to ever be nominated to the position, she is the first civil rights attorney ever to be nominated to the position, the third-ranking official in the Justice Department. That's shocking, really. We never have had a former civil rights attorney serving in such a position of prominence at the Justice Department. In that sense alone, Ms. Gupta would bring a long overdue perspective to our federal law enforcement agency. And just to give you a sense of Ms. Gupta's commitment to civil rights and racial equity, in her very first case after law school, she won the release of several African Americans who had been wrongly convicted by all-white juries in Texas. Her clients later won a full pardon from Texas Governor Rick Perry. At a time when our country needs to make strides against racial injustice, how can we not install one of the nation's top civil rights lawyers at the Department of Justice? How can our colleagues not rise to the occasion, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and vote for her? I'm so troubled by the fact that they are virtually unanimously against such a fine person who is needed so much at this time. Yep, but unfortunately, Ms. Gupta might be the first nominee in this Congress where the vote falls entirely down on party lines. I hope it doesn't come to that. The effort to elevate highly qualified civil rights attorneys like Ms. Gupta should be bipartisan. I urge my colleagues, all of them, and particularly my friends on the other side of the aisle, to vote in favor of Ms. Gupta's nomination today. Competitiveness on a different matter here. For nearly a century, America's national security and economic security has been grounded in our scientific and technological superiority, often supported by smart investments by the federal government. But in recent years, countries like China have closed the gap with the United States. If we fail to respond, they will overtake us, with drastic consequences for our workers, businesses, and allies and partners around the world. It's long past time for the United States to make the next wave of investments to fix dangerous weak spots in our economy and preserve our place as the world leader in science and technology, which then leads to millions of good-paying jobs here in this country. So today, I'm proud to join with my friend, the Republican senator from Indiana, Senator Young, and several of my colleagues from both sides to reintroduce the Endless Frontier Act. It's a big, bold, bipartisan initiative to propel American science and technology into the 21st century. Let me stress that last point. This bill is bipartisan. As Senator Young and I have worked on the bill over the past several months, several senators from both sides have been added as original co-sponsors, 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans. That's because there's a bipartisan consensus that the United States must invest in the technologies of the future to outcompete China. Whichever nation develops new technologies first, be they democratic or authoritarian, will set the terms for their use. The stakes for personal privacy and personal liberties, as well as for national security, economic security, and minority rights around the globe, are simply enormous. So at the center of this legislation is a $100 billion investment in research, commercialization, and workforce training in the kinds of technology that will play an outsized role in the future. Semiconductors, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, 5G, to name a few. Another $10 billion would foster the development of technological hubs around the country. We want to see Silicon Valleys across the country, from my home state, New York, in upstate, to communities in the South, to the Midwest, to other places that rarely get the attention they merit, despite the potential of their workforces, their institutions, and their links to the global economy. Technological growth and jobs should not be limited to a few centers in America, and this bill attempts to spread it to other communities as well. It will also strengthen the critical supply chains in the U.S. with global allies and partners. The Endless Frontiers Act is exactly what we need to reinvigorate American science and technology, to promote our national security, and create jobs of the future. I've committed to put a bipartisan related bill on the floor of the Senate. I have committed to put a bipartisan competitive related bill on the floor of the Senate. The Endless Frontier Act will be a central part of that legislation. We will also push for emergency spending to implement the bipartisan semiconductor manufacturing provisions in last year's defense bill. And another potential component, led by Senators Menendez and Risch, is being marked up in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee this week. This is exactly what our Republican colleagues have asked for when it comes to regular order. We are marking up bipartisan bills in committee and considering bipartisan amendments here on the floor. We're just seeing that process play out on the anti-Asian hate crimes bill this week. And next week, we're going to follow it up with a water infrastructure bill that is also thoroughly bipartisan. Our efforts to cement another century of American economic leadership should be no different, thoroughly bipartisan. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.